Welcome everybody. This is the WMO High Impact Weather webinar on communicating about high impact weather and the role of communicating uncertainty, trust and beliefs. My name is Sally Potter. I'm from GNS Science in New Zealand and I'll be facilitating and sharing this webinar series. So a huge welcome to everybody. And I'm very excited that we've got such a global audience today from both the audience and the panelists. It's a really important challenge that we need to address about communicating uncertainty and the role of trust and beliefs. I think I've personally been told about it quite a lot from a range of people, from researchers to weather forecasters to emergency managers, and they will say, how are we supposed to communicate uncertainty? Do people want to hear this information or not? And so I think it'll be really good for us to be able to address this through the research program. We'll go around and introduce the panelists shortly. First of all, I'll go through the program for today. Andrea will be giving a presentation about the High Impact Weather Program and the Communication Task Team activities. That will be followed by Dr. Susan Jocelyn from the US, who will be talking about the role of uncertainty and experts. Then we'll be going to Dr. Thomas Cox from Germany, who will be talking about stakeholders and the way that they like to have uncertainty communicated to them. And then finally, we'll have Associate Professor Amisha Mehta from Australia. We'll be talking about trust and a potential project that we'll be working on through the HIWeather program. Following each of those presenters, we'll be having a few minutes for questions. And then we'll have at the end a panel discussion where you can contribute questions to that too. Once we've introduced ourselves, we'll get into that. So it's going to take a few minutes before we get started there. I just want you to know that you can use that Q&A function, the chat function on the right there, to put any questions you want for the panelists. You can also give it a try by putting in your name, affiliation and country. So you can start doing that now if you want. You can ask questions during the presentations and also for the panel discussion, and it will be moderated. You can like the comments that are put in there to kind of upvote them. And you can also reply directly to those questions so that we don't have to, try and find the reply further down the list. The webinar, including the content of that Q&A, will be recorded and it will be made publicly available afterwards. This is particularly exciting because no one in the organising team has actually used the Teams live events before. So apologies if there are any kind of rough moments, but we're all learning in this COVID world of presenting online, so wish us all the best for that. So we'll go around the panelists now and introduce ourselves. So I'll go first. I'm the co-lead of the HIWeather Communication Task Team. I conduct research, social science research in New Zealand on how people respond to warnings and how best to write those warnings and forecasts. I've done a lot of work with geohazards, including for eruption forecasts and earthquake aftershock forecasts for GNS Science in New Zealand. And I also work with New Zealand's Met Service and work with them on the communication of impact-based weather warnings. So I'll hand over now to Andrea Taylor, my co-host.
Thank you, Sally. My name is Andrea Taylor. I'm an academic at the University of Leeds in the UK. My background is in cognitive psychology, and I apply this to addressing challenges regarding weather and climate risk communication faced by forecasting centres around the world, including the UK Met Office, but also Met services in East and West Africa through the African Swift project. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. On to Susan Jocelyn now, please.
Hello, I'm Susan Jocelyn. I'm from the University of Washington. I'm also a cognitive psychologist, and I study decision-making under uncertainty, in particular how to communicate uncertainty to end users. mainly in the domain of weather, but I've also done work in the context of climate change, and also very recently in the context of communicating risk for COVID-19.
Thank you, Susan. Thomas.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Thomas Cox. I'm from the Department of Geography at LMU Munich, and my work is on the perception and use of uncertainty, and mainly with a focus on emergency management and civil protection units.
Thank you, Thomas. And Amisha.
Good morning from Australia. My name's Amisha Mehta. I specialise in risk and crisis communication, and for the last 8 years have been working with emergency management organisations in Australia to help craft their flood and bushfire warnings to support community trust and positive responsive actions in the response phase of natural hazards, and more recently have partnered with our Bureau of Meteorology to look at how community members respond to weather warnings.
Wonderful, thanks Amisha. And I'd just like to acknowledge Martin Wigman from the World Meteorological Organization, who's done a wonderful job in setting up this event for us and handling all the registration emails, etc. So thank you, Martin. Okay, we're going to kick off now into our first presentation, which is going to be by Andrea, talking about the High Impact Weather research program and the communication task team activities. Over to you, Andrea. I can see her frantically getting the content ready. Perhaps while she's doing that, I'll just remind everyone that you can put in your affiliation and your name into the chat function there and have it up, and we'll put it onto the chat function.
Andrea, you're muted.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And good morning, afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. As mentioned, I am Andrea Taylor. And today, as an introduction to this seminar, I'm going to be giving a brief overview of some of the task team activities of the High Impact Weather Project's Communications Task Group. So this task group is jointly led by Sally and myself. And the mission of the High Impact Weather Project on growing resilience through better warnings is to promote cooperative international research to achieve a dramatic increase in resilience to high impact weather worldwide through improving forecasts for timescales of minutes to 2 weeks and enhancing their communication and utility in social, economic and environmental applications. So this is a program that really brings together meteorological science focused on processes, predictability, modelling and verification with impact assessments and social science approaches to evaluation and communication. So it's a really very interdisciplinary program. And reflecting this, we have 5 task teams within HIWeather focused on different areas of what we might be able to think of as the warning value chain. So this goes from predictability and the processes underpinning high impact weather events to multi-scale forecasting of weather hazards in coupled modelling systems, to human hazards, to human impacts, vulnerability and risk to individuals, organisations and societies, to forecast evaluation, both in terms of numeric verification approaches in the forecasting process, to user evaluations of forecast quality and usefulness. And then we come to the work of our task team, the communications task team, where we focus on to achieve more effective responses to forecasts through better communication of hazard risk warnings. So I've got here just a list of the current task team members. As you can see, we are quite spread out around the world, but we're always interested in welcoming new members who are doing work on high impact weather communication, whether they be based in academia, operational centres, public sector, private sector, non-profit sector. So we definitely are always interested in growing the activities of the task team and its membership further with those who share our interest in the communication of high impact weather. So I've just got here a slide giving an overview of some of our past and ongoing activities, as well as some that we would like to develop further. So a couple of years ago, we had a special issue in the International Journal of Disaster Risk Reduction, capturing key issues in high impact weather communication, which I'll talk a little more in a second. We have ongoing activity collating training materials for weather communication to host or to link on our high weather communications platform to really provide a point of reference for those looking to develop best practice in this area. The use of social media and non-traditional data sources for communicating about weather. So both using social media for the dissemination of weather forecasts and warnings from forecasters to different audiences, but also using social media as a tool, for instance, in weather warning verification. To develop interpretation aids for forecasters, so going beyond looking at communications from just providers to users, but looking at communication between forecasters themselves. Recently, we've been focusing on developing post-event case studies, and this is really a cross-cutting activity across the whole high weather project. To conduct case studies of high impact weather events, including the warning process from the initial processing of meteorological data through to forecast production, dissemination, communication and evaluation. And of course, we also have activities centered around the topics of today's seminar on uncertainty and the role of trust, salience and belief in warning response. So, as I mentioned on the last slide, one of our earliest task team activities was to publish and edit a special issue on key issues in high impact weather communication, which was published in the International Journal of Disaster Risk Reduction in 2018. And amongst the papers comprising the special issue, we found that 5 core themes really emerge. The development of impact-based warning systems to support decision making. So impact-based warnings, the idea of basing warnings on the impacts that severe weather can have, rather than just the exceedance of particular meteorological thresholds. On tailoring forecasts and warnings for different users and their specific needs. The emerging role of social media in communication and verification. The wider behavioural, social and cultural and political context in which warnings are used, and really speaking today's topic, which crossed over so many of the papers within this special issue, trust and its interplay and relationship with forecast uncertainty. So I just have here a little plug for the special issue. There are some really great papers that comprise this set. If you would like to access the issue but find that you can't due to institutional restrictions, please do get in touch with me. So, in terms of the special issue, we noted that several themes related to trust and uncertainty emerged here. So questions regarding how should we communicate uncertainty to different audiences, if indeed we should communicate it to all audiences at all times. How do people understand and respond to different representations of uncertainty, be they graphs, maps, verbal statements or numeric probabilities? How do forecast updates and changes in uncertainty across lead times impact on trust in forecasts and warnings? Do past experiences, say, of false alarms, affect trust? Does trust affect responses to forecasts and warnings? So we know that trust can vary amongst different groups, and how does this affect responses to forecast information once released? And can trust in forecast providers exist even when confidence in the forecast may be relatively low? So, I mean, within HIWeather and our task team specifically, these are key things that we're interested in. So many of those who are engaged in our task team are doing research on the communication and perception of uncertainty. And we aim to review and collate findings in this area. However, at present, unfortunately, we don't currently have a lead for this particular activity. So please do get in touch with Sally or myself if you think that you may be interested in contributing to this area of work. Another task team objective, which Amisha has recently come to take the lead on, focuses on conducting a review of the current state of knowledge on the impact of trust, salience, and beliefs on weather warning interpretation and response. So we're really excited that Amisha has come to take the lead on this, and I, for one, am really looking forward to her presentation today. And of course, we welcome interest from anybody who would like to help contribute to and support this review and work. So if, having heard about this, you are interested in finding out more about HIWeather as the project as a whole, or the communications task team specifically, we have a website at hiweather.net and our communications platform at hiweathercoms.net. So please do visit these sites if you're interested in finding out more. And of course, if you have any specific questions, you can contact either Sally or myself. So to conclude, I just have another rundown of the program here. Next, we'll be going to Susan and then Thomas and Amisha. And thank you for listening to this introduction. Hopefully I can back onto Sally now. I can see.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Andrea. So we will need to see if there are any questions coming through in the Q&A. People feel free to ask any questions about the HIWeather program and the communication task team in that chat function there. Otherwise, Andrea's given a really good overview of what we're planning on doing, and as you can see, there are still some gaps that need to be addressed on this topic. So I'll give you a minute or two just in case you want to put any questions in that chat function, and then we'll move on to Susan's talk. I'm loving the introductions, by the way. Everyone has really come from around the world for this, and I can see we've got over 170 participants today. So that's very exciting that we've got such global interest in this. Last chance for questions. Okay, we'll move on to Susan.